Are dyslexic individuals more emotional than non-dyslexic individuals? Because we know that in general, neurodivergent people tend to experience our emotions very intensely, but also it appears that there is actually some research backing up the idea that dyslexic individuals might in fact experience their emotions more intensely than non-dyslexic individuals. In 2022, there was a study that was published that I'll put the title on the screen, but it was a study where they took 54 children, some dyslexic and some non-dyslexic, and they had them watch things to evoke emotion, and then they measured their facial reactions, they measured their physiological responses, and then they also worked to measure their subjective experiences of what they were watching that was supposed to evoke emotion. And what they found was that the dyslexic individuals appeared to have a heightened reaction, a heightened emotional reaction to the things that they observed, and it appears that that was a result of them having greater connectivity to the salience network of the brain, which is a group of brain regions that's responsible for identifying and evaluating internal and external stimuli, which means it's looking for what are the things that I'm seeing, observing, experiencing, and how important are they, and what should I do about them. The reason that matters is that if dyslexic individuals actually have a greater connectivity to that part of the brain, then we're going to be more sensitive to any sort of stimuli that is in our environment or anything that we're experiencing. So if dyslexic individuals actually do have a greater connection to our salient network and therefore experience emotions more intensely, what does that mean, or how does that help or impact our daily lives? On the positive side, dyslexic individuals tend to be known for having deep and meaningful relationships, to being good interpersonally, and even for having like a good emotional connection to themselves, which, if this is the case, it seems like that could be part of the reason why that is. On the flip side though, when you have a more intense connection to your emotions, that means you experience things more intensely, which can be more difficult to regulate, but also it seems like that also means that that could be one of the reasons that dyslexic individuals are more predisposed to experiencing mood disorders like anxiety and depression. But there's another piece here that's really important, and that's that being dyslexic doesn't exist in a vacuum. And the things that happen in our environments, in the way that people treat us or the ways that they interact with us, impact us deeply. Think about it. If you have someone who experiences their emotions and the things that are going on in their environment more intensely, and they experience a lot of ridicule, they experience being in an educational system that doesn't really work for them, they experience all of these feelings of comparing themselves to other people and coming up short, and they have to deal with all of the frustration that comes with that. But it's not just frustration, it's even more intense than it might be for somebody who was not dyslexic. That can have a really negative impact. And I would argue that that's actually probably one of the reasons that it's so much more common for dyslexic individuals to experience things like anxiety and depression than our non-dyslexic peers. Because when you have a predisposition to experiencing emotion intensely, and so much of what you experience is negative or hurtful or hard, that has to impact you. That has to impact how you feel about yourself and how you feel about life in general. Which is why it's so important that dyslexic individuals are taught how to be emotionally mature. That's why it's so important for parents, for teachers, for anyone who interacts with dyslexic kids, and arguably this is true for all kids, but especially for dyslexic kids, what to do with those big emotions. When you have a predisposition to experience your emotions more intensely, it's really important to figure out, how do I regulate those? Because regulating intense emotions takes a lot of work. And if we aren't taught how to do that, it's easy to never really learn how to do it effectively, how to do it in a way that makes it so that our intense emotions can actually enhance our lives rather than just making it seem like they're way more difficult. And the other piece to this is that when you experience these things more intensely, if you learn how to regulate them, if you learn how to engage with them effectively, it's an incredible tool for connecting with people, for being able to understand and be empathetic and be compassionate. And that's really valuable in a lot of life. So if you are dyslexic, practice mindfulness. Practice noticing, what am I experiencing? Practice self-regulation techniques. Practice using coping skills to deal with the things that you're experiencing, so that when you have these really intense emotional reactions to things, you can respond to them effectively. And if you're a parent or a teacher or an adult who interacts with dyslexic children, practice slowing down. Practice drawing attention to emotions in a way that's curious and compassionate and not critical. So when your child has a strong reaction, pause, make sure you are regulated, and then say, hey, Seems like you're feeling really frustrated right now, and that makes sense based on what's going on. Actually label and sit with the emotions rather than criticizing, dismissing, judging, being like, you're too much, stop. Because the more we practice doing that, the more we practice labeling and making space for them, the more we can actually teach our kids, our dyslexic kids and our non-dyslexic kids, how to effectively regulate their emotions, which will seriously help them be able to actually leverage those things in helpful and effective ways for themselves and even for others. What's really important here is that when somebody experiences their emotions intensely, we have to communicate that that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to have intense emotions. You are not too sensitive, which is the message that gets thrown out so often, which is really sad because that's actually a really hurtful and harmful message. But when we can send the message that you have intense emotions and that's okay, that's good actually, you can use that to feel, you can use that to connect with people, you can use that to be compassionate, that's valuable. At the end of the day, regardless of whether there is a causal relationship between being dyslexic and experiencing emotions more intensely, it does seem like there is a theme that dyslexic individuals and neurodivergent individuals in general do tend to experience emotions intensely. In working to support our neurodivergent, our dyslexic, our ADHD, our autistic kids, in learning how to regulate those emotions and learning how to feel them without judgment or criticism about the fact that they are feeling them will make a huge difference both on their lives but also on the relationships that they're able to develop with others. So going back to the question from the beginning, are dyslexic individuals more emotional? Well, maybe. It does kind of seem like they are. It does kind of seem like that's where the research points, and that's not a bad thing. But it is one of the many, many ways that dyslexia impacts daily life outside of just reading or writing. So thank you for being here. If you're still here, remember, I appreciate you, but otherwise, I hope you have a lovely, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Thank you for watching.